They got us good. They're a massive dog in this hand, and the turn's 10 of spades. And then the river, it's the king of spades. So we hit a 2-outer. You can see my opponent's reaction there. They were not happy with it.
Hey YouTube.
G'day poker people, welcome back to the vlog. We've got another live vlog for you. I'm about to head out to the game that I played in last week. It's currently a quarter to 6 p.m, but I'm sure the next time I talk to you it'll be past quarter to 6 a.m. So planning another all-nighter. Hopefully the game's as juicy as it was last week, and hopefully I run as good as I did last week. So without any further ado, let's get into the action. Welcome back. It's currently 1 p.m. on the Sunday after the game, so about a bit less than 2 days removed from the game. Ended up getting in there at 7:30 and ended up finishing the game at about 4 a.m. the next day, so plenty of volume, pretty long session. You can see here, this is my initial buy-in of 600. It was a 1-3 game, but everyone struggled every single hand, so it was really a 1-3-6 game. We've got plenty of interesting hand histories to get into, so let's get to it. So action starts off in the first hand with an under the gun raise to 15, then the low jack calls, and the action gets to a pretty short stacked cutoff, who goes ahead and rips it all in for 120, and then things get interesting because the action's on a tight aggressive button, and they actually decide to just flat the 120 with about 600 for their starting stack. And then things get even more interesting when I'm in the small blind and I look down at Ace King. I could potentially just flat the 120 to try and induce action from the under the gun player or the low jack, but really don't like that play. Would rather try and get the Ace King heads up with the all in player, because I think our equity against that range of hands that's going all in with a short stack is absolutely way ahead for us. They can have king queen, they could have pocket threes, they could have ace 10 offsuit, so we're just going to be way ahead, and I want to try and get all in with them. The only thing I am slightly hesitant about is I do think it's somewhat possible the button is trapping with aces and kings, but that's not the only hands in their range. They can also have ace queen, ace jack, pocket nine, stuff like that as well, and if we're able to fold them off of some of those hands and get our equity heads up with the cutoffs range, then we just got $120 of whatever our equity is against that range. We just win that right there. So absolutely slam dunk spot. I go ahead and rip it all in for 600. The under the gun player folds. The low jack tanks a little bit before deciding to fold himself. Then the action's back on the button, and they start tanking for a while, and they're like, oh, I'm not sure what you're doing with this, before they eventually end up folding their hand as well. We end up heads up with the cutoff for all in. I end up showing my ace king, and the opponent shows pocket jacks, so we do have a classic race here, but fortunately for us, it's an ace high board on the flop, and we do end up scooping the opponent because we only ran it one time here, and absolutely stoked with how this hand ran out, obviously. Winning the first hand of the session. Next hand we get two early position limpers, and then the action is on me in the hijack with my second favourite hand in all of poker, pocket kings. Definitely going to go ahead and ISO raise here. I'll go ahead and make it 30, which I think is honestly way too small. I think in a 1-3-6 game with two limbers, I should probably be going like 40, 45. So slight mistake there. I only go 30, and then I get a call from both the button and the small blind. Then the action gets back around to the original limper, and they actually decide to limp re-raise. They go ahead and make it 120. Then the other limper folds. The action's back on me here, and limp re-raises, they can be pretty nutted. So I am slightly concerned that my opponent does have aces when they limp re-raise, but I really think with a hand as strong as pocket kings, I am going to be giving a lot of value if I don't go ahead and 4-bet here. Because yeah, they could be trapping with aces, they could also be trapping with queens, ace king, and then occasionally bluffing as well, potentially. So I can't be too concerned about the monsters under the bed here, in my opinion. After thinking a bit, I do decide to 4-bet to 240, so do the old 2x raise as a 4-bet in position. Then the button and small blinds, they do tank a bit before deciding to fold. Then the action's back on the under the gun player. And this is where things get kind of awkward, because the under the gun player, they just grab a stack of red and they like slam it down as hard as they can next to their other stack of 100. And then they start to move like the other 300 they had behind. They just start to move those chips all in. And I think like this is obviously a string bet, like of course it is. But I think in a home game, like you can be a bit more lenient lenient with those rules and everyone's trying to be friendly. So I probably should have just let it slide and let, the all-in happen. Like, I have kings anyway. Like, I'm happy to get all-in pre-flop, but I actually did speak up and say something to the dealer, and I'm like, come on, mate, that's a string bet. We have to treat it as a call. And then the dealer enforced that rule that it was just a call instead of a 5-bet all-in. And I really regret doing this. I think it just unnecessarily creates a bit of hostility between me and the under the gun player, which was not necessary. And I have kings anyway, I'm trying to get all in. I think I sort of got caught up in the emotions of the hand, like how confident the player was when they slammed their chips down. Really made me think they had aces, and I was just sort of tilted by that. So pretty disappointed in myself for speaking up, but regardless, I did get my way. Their slam was just counted as a call, so we do actually see a flop. The flop is 6-4-3, and the under the gun player checks it over to me, and look, I'm still concerned that they could potentially have aces, but I think I still have to go all in here, try to get value from queens, or maybe even if ace-king wants to float. So I do decide to rip my stack all in, then the opponent snap calls, I show my kings, and then they show pocket aces, and unfortunately we don't get there on a jack-high board. Kings versus aces, it's the most classic, obvious cooler in the world, and it's for less than 100 straddles, so I can't be complaining that I lost this hand, or that I even played it badly, but the thing I am disappointed about is I sort of spoke up and got the game to enforce the string bet rule, and I think that was sort of it's just poor form, I don't need to be doing that. We can sort of let things like that slide in these home games, and pretty disappointed in myself for letting the bad situation tilt me. Next hand, I am in the cutoff with pocket jacks. I go ahead and raise it up to 15. Both the button and the small blind calls, and the action's on a very loose aggressive big blind who just rips their stack all in for 200. This is probably the third or fourth time the opponent's done this pre-flop so far. So when the action gets back to me with jacks, I definitely want to, definitely not folding jacks. I will consider folding jacks in this spot against some opponents, but not when I've seen them do this 3 or 4 times. I don't want to flat either. 600 effective. There is some chance that I'll induce further calls from the button and small blind if I do just decide to flat, and really not looking to take pocket jacks all in multi-way. So I do decide to mix in the raise. I go ahead and min click it to 400. Yet again with the 4-bet min clicks in position, and then it does induce a fold from the button and small blind. So we do get heads up with the other player. So I end up showing my pocket jacks straight away, which is usually what I do when I'm all in, and the opponent didn't actually want to show their cards. They sort of just held on to them. So we don't know what we're up against in this hand, but we did get the board running out ace, queen, 8, 3, queen. It's not a very good board for us, as you can see, but fortunately the opponent does muck their hand, so we don't really know what they had, but we do know that we're going to scoop in this pot, and the run good's starting to come back our way for this one. Next hand, we get an under the gun open to 15. The hijack calls, then I'm in the cutoff with my second favourite hand in poker, yet again, pocket kings. Definitely want to go ahead and 3-bet here. I raise it up to 60. Then the big blind actually decides to cold call my 60, which of course induces overcalls from both the under the gun and the hijack. So we go 4 ways to a flop of 7-5-4 with 2 spades. Still have our overpair. The action's on the big blind, and they actually decide to lead out at 75. Then both the under the gun and the low jack fold. The action's back on me, and I think when people cold call 3-bets pre-flop, the range usually has a lot of stuff that's like pocket queens through pocket nines, and I really do think that it's possible that the opponent's leading out with an overpair here, trying to deny equity to hands like ace king and stuff. So when the action folds to me, I think it's a good spot to rip it all in for value, just trying to get called by, pocket jacks, or a nut flush draw is even a hand they could potentially lead out with. So that's what I decide to do. I decide to put them all in for about 340. They snap call, I show my kings, and then they roll over. Pocket fours. Oh, so they did flop a set, let it out, and they got us good. So a massive dog in this hand, and the turn's 10 of spades. And then the river, it's the king of spades. So we hit a 2-outer. You can see my opponent's reaction there. They were not happy with it. Yep, we absolutely luck boxed a 2-outer on the river. The under the gun player actually said that they folded the 4th king. So if that's true, then we literally hit a 1-outer to scoop this massive pot. And yeah, definitely can't be complaining about my kings versus aces when I'm running hot in hands like this. Next hand, we've got my new favourite variant of poker, Double bomb pot, baby. Unfortunately, I'm out of position for this one. I'm under the gun with 10-9 of diamonds. The run good continues because I'm going to put both the boards up there. You can see on the first board, we have a flush draw and a gut shot for a huge combo draw. And we have the stone cold nuts on the second board. So yeah, running pretty hot to hit this board with this hand in a bomb pot. The action's on me, and I think I have a pretty interesting decision on this street, whether I want to lead out or I want to check to mix in the check raise. In game, I decided to check it. Really think with so many people in the hands, there's going to be so many two pairs, people even betting top pair for protection, that we're going to make more EV by check raising rather than we are just leading out, because I don't think people will raise unless they do already have a made straight on one of the boards, but we block that having the 10-9 ourselves. So I decided to check it. Doesn't work out for me though, because the action checks through. So we're off to 2 turns. The first turn's 2 of clubs, the second turn is the 5 of hearts. Somehow we luck box that this changes nothing about the board texture, and definitely going to go ahead and bet now. No one's shown any interest, but maybe they'll call a bit lighter on this straight, so I want to go ahead and bet big. I go ahead and make it 70. The low jack folds and the hijack decides to rip it all in for 673, so massive bet there. The action folds back to me and snap call here. We know we're winning at least half of the board since we have the nuts on the second board, but we sort of expect that we're going to be chopping. We do lose to like any pair on that board, so we kind of expect to lose, but we do have outs to improve to a flush, so even if we are only winning half the pot, we could potentially scoop if we get there with our flush. And then our opponent shows 8-5 of clubs. So actually they have 2 pair on the second board, but they actually only have 8 high on the first board. So our 10 high on the first board is good. So we actually leave favourite to scoop the whole thing. The first river is the 7 of spades. So we actually scoop with 10 high on the first board. On the second board, we just have to hope it doesn't pair, which it doesn't because the river's a 4 of spades. So we actually end up scooping this entire massive pot here with our nut straight and with 10 high on the first board. So absolutely on fire so far this session, winning another massive pot. My luck has definitely turned around at this point. We're about 6 or so hours into the game at this point, and the host of the game actually suggested, you guys want to do the button bounty? And I'm like, hell yeah, love the button bounty game. But what about instead of doing it on the button, put the money on the button, but if the small blind wins, they get it. And then everyone agrees to do this, thankfully, because I love the button bounty game, but it's even better when it's an out of position player like the small blind or under the gun, just because those players win less often and the money on the button gets really, really high, and everyone agrees to it. So from now on, playing the button bounty game, everyone puts 5 on the button. We're 6-handed at this point, so it's at least $30 on the button. Every time the button gets on you, you put another $5 on, and it accumulates until someone wins it again. So you can imagine how crazy action this is, how often people are going to be 3-betting out of the small blind. Fortunately, this hand is on my small blind, and there is $60 on the bounty. So the button goes ahead and raises to 15. You know the chances I'm going to 3-bet here are pretty high, but they're even higher when I look down at pocket queens. This would be a slam dunk 3-bet spot anyway, but the fact that we actually have a nutted hand, whew, beautiful spot for us. I go ahead and 3-bet it to 75. Then the big blind decides to call the 75, and the button calls as well. So we go 3 ways to a flop, which is 8-5 for rainbow. The action's on me, and I decide to check it out of position to 2 people when I induce bets from worse hands. And then the big blind goes ahead and bets 155. The button folds, the action's back on me, and I think I just want to call in this spot. It's sort of like with the pocket 4 hands. I do think it's possible that my opponent has a worse overpair, and I could get value from that by raising. Some concern that they might even fold pocket jacks to a check raise. My 3-betting range out of the small blind is really loose, remember, so I actually could potentially have sets or even a straight on this board, so I do have to be concerned. I do just call. So we're heads up to a turn now, which is the 9 of diamonds. I check it again, really don't have the betting lead at this point, so would it make sense to lead out here? I check it over to my opponent, and they think a bit before ripping it all in for about 485. The action's on me, and I do tank a bit. Somewhat concerned that they could have like 9-8, pocket 9s, or even a flop set, though I really can't be folding here, and I do throw in the call. Wish I did call a bit quicker, because my opponent asked me straight away after I called, do you have pocket queens? And I'm like, yes, and he like winces, and then shows that he does have pocket jacks. I say I want to run it one time, because I have the small blind bounty, and I don't want to chop this pot. I want to win it one time and get the small blind bounty. So we see one river, which is the king of diamonds, so no help from my opponent, and we end up scooping in yet another massive pot in this session. Cannot believe how hot I'm running so far. Next hand, there's only $30 on the small blind bounty. Cutoff goes ahead and open limps, and then small blind, they throw in the limp as well. And then the big blind decides to raise it up to 40. Then I'm in the straddle and I look down at ace king again. Woo. So many premiums tonight. Definitely going to go ahead and 3-bet it here. I make it 120. And then the cutoff actually decides to call the 120 after limping. And this is the same opponent who had the pocket four hands, where I absolutely luckboxed the 1-outer. Then the big blind throws in the call as well. So we are 3 ways to a flop. King 9-4 with 2 hearts. So good board for us. We do get there with our top pair. Big blind goes ahead and checks it over to me, and definitely could see going ahead and betting a hand like this for value, but in game, I did actually decide to check, and the reason for that is the cutoff only started the hand with about 400, so the SPR for them is less than 1. I do think if they limp call with like a pocket pair or something like that, they might just rip their stack all in now, and I would love to induce that from them, because when they do that, I think some of those hands won't call if I just bet out myself. But if they do that with a worse hand, there's some chance that the big blind might float a bit wider than they would if I just bet myself, because they're going to know my range is a bit weaker when I haven't led out. And it will be weak for the most part, but this is going to be one of the strongest hands I do have in my range when I check the flop. So I check it over to the cutoff, and they do actually decide to check back. So damn, plan didn't work, but we're still 3 ways to a turn, which is the 6 of clubs putting out backdoor clubs. And then the big blind decides to bet out for 150. The action's on me, and I have a slam dunk call here. There's 2 potential flush draws out there, even though we do block, a pair and a flush draw, having the king of clubs ourselves, but they can definitely still have flush draws. They could even be betting, king queen suited, king jack suited, slam dunk spot to call, and then the cutoff folds. So we are heads up to the river now. The river's the 2 of clubs, so the backdoor flush draw does get in. And then my opponent goes out and bets 300. The action's on me here, and this is a pretty gross spot now. Actually, I don't think my opponent is betting a worse king for value anymore. I think they're going to be more polarized in this spot to either a set or the backdoor flush, or potentially a bluff. I am concerned that they have the stronger hands. I look at the board and I'm like, not really sure what possible combinations they could beat bluffing with. Front door flush draw did miss, but players typically don't bluff with a front door flush draw, so I'm kind of skeptical that the opponent would be doing that. And I just know when they call my 3-bet, they're going to have all of the hands as sets on this board except for the pocket kings, 9s, 6s, and 4s, so definitely concerned about that. Backdoor flushes as well, not having the ace of clubs, they can have all of the nut flushes. So all of that considered, I do actually decide to lay my hand down. Yeah, pretty sick spot. I really do think their range is going to be pretty strong there. So many flushes, so many sets, and not many bluffs I can think of. I end up folding the ace king, and then the opponent throws their cards over to me. I look at it, they have ace 5 of hearts. Gross spot. They did actually bluff with a front door flush draw. Pretty sick that they did use the front door flush when I didn't think they would, but it's a great spot to go for it. Clearly, I'm like hardly ever defending if I'm not calling with ace king here. Power to them. They got a good bluff through, and kicking myself that I didn't put my foot down and call. So there you go. Those were the most interesting hands I played across the session. Absolute sun run of a session for us. Ended up buying in for 1.2k. Did have to get the second buy in after my kings ran into aces, but we ran it up from that point. Ended up cashing out for 3.6 thousand after I tipped the dealer to make it a nice even number, which leaves me with a profit of 2.4 thousand. Massive win off a 136 game, and San ran like crazy in all of those big all-in pots with the bomb pot, and then cracking the opponent's set when I hit the 2-outer, or technically 1-outer. Absolute sun run of a session. Massive win that I was not expecting. That's how I ran in the game, which was phenomenal. But in terms of my actual gameplay grade, I'm gonna go with a B grade. I do like some of the decisions I made across this session, but I do think I made a few critical mistakes. I do think ripping it all in with the kings, whilst it worked out for me because I hit a 2-outer, I really think in the long run I could potentially induce hero folds if my opponent does have like 10s or jacks, in which case I'm just negative free rolling myself by getting called off with a set. I wasn't really thinking that decision fully through. Pretty disappointed with that. There were different phases throughout the session, particularly when we were playing the button game, when it was later on and I was tired for that reason, but it was still like I didn't try like hard enough to really be aggressive and go after the extra equity of winning the button. Like sometimes I would just like be in autopilot and fold the small blind when I look down at a middling hand, and it's like sometimes you have to VPip those when you got the extra EV of potentially winning the small blind bounty. So felt like I was a bit lethargic and a bit unfocused for this session, so I can't quite go to that A grade, but still I was disciplined for the most part and didn't do anything too crazy to give away stack, except for potentially that pocket kings versus pocket four hands. Can't go too low, but definitely can't go too high to that A grade either. Don't think I was on my best game possible despite running phenomenal. So I'm going to go with that B grade for the session. So that's going to wrap up the vlog for today. Thank you so much for sticking all the way to the end of the video. That really helps my channel's analytics and I do appreciate it. If you haven't already, hop down in the comments below, leave a comment on your opinion on the different hand histories I've played. Always super keen to have a strategy discourse with the people who watch these videos, so I would appreciate it if you did that. But for now, I'm out of here. Peace.